What if Tenochtitlan, the island city at the heart of the Aztec Empire, had never been sacked by European conquerors? In the alternate timeline of Aztec Forgotten Gods, we get to see what that might have looked like. A thriving, technologically advanced metropolis that blends Mesoamerican-inspired design with a Tron-like aesthetic. Described by Mexico-based developer Lienzo as a cyberstone action-adventure, Aztec's memorable setting can be delightful to explore. That is, when the wonky camera and frustrating boss fights aren't getting in the way. Aztec Forgotten Gods is a fairly linear adventure about Actli, a young woman so haunted by her past that she can't move forward in life. On a dig with her archaeologist mother, Actli finds an ancient artifact, a giant stone arm that replaces her own prosthetic one and lets her soar high above the city streets. Unfortunately, uncovering this artifact also awakened a group of ancient gods that are now threatening to destroy Tenochtitlan, showing Actli that she literally can't run from the past. The story works well enough, but Actli is underserved by the fact that the dialogue is text only and often accompanied by repeating animations that show characters moving their lips and bodies in the same way over and over again. Even so, the defiant Actli, her ride-or-die best friend Teppo, and her supportive mother Nancine are all entertaining and likable characters, thanks to Aztec's snappy writing and story. Flying from one edge of the city to the other feels amazing once you get used to it. Launching Actli into the air and soaring around in every direction feels natural and fluid. You'll spend most of your time in the air, though a depleting energy bar sometimes requires you to be thoughtful about when and where you land, particularly during combat. Few games have made flying feel so intuitive, and this system sets Aztec apart from other action-adventure games that take place largely on solid land. That said, despite being large and full of structures, the city often feels empty, hardly the bustling metropolis and global superpower it's supposed to be. There aren't many inhabitants, and the NPCs that do meander around don't have much to say. Unfortunately, the combat isn't nearly as enjoyable as the exploration either. For the most part, fighting both the smaller enemies that pop up throughout Tenochtitlan and the oversized stony gods is an exercise in button mashing. Actli does have a few special moves, like a powered-up super punch, but they're rarely worth using unless you're required to because the biggest battles are so chaotic. Instead, it's much more effective to spam basic attacks and fly away when your health gets too low. The boss battles themselves can feel like more of a chore than a challenge too. These hulking masses of stone and mythology typically require several steps to defeat, but the objectives of each phase are often unclear. There might be times when you can't tell if you're actually doing any damage unless you glance at the enemy's health bar. And defeating those gods always comes with a feeling of relief that it was over, not satisfaction. The biggest foe you'll face in Aztec isn't one of the titular Forgotten Gods, though. It's the camera. While you're technically in control of the camera's movement, it sometimes feels like it has a mind of its own. Rogue camera angles can remove Actli from view entirely, which isn't an ideal way to play a third-person action game. The camera might also switch angles depending on where she lands, messing up the fluidity of the otherwise delightful mobility. This is a big reason why the boss fights can be frustrating. It's not fun taking the time to set up an attack only to have it thwarted when the camera switches around at random. What Aztec lacks in polish, it at least makes up for in style. The Mesoamerican inspiration shines through in the customizable outfits and hairstyles, character designs, and the sprawling city itself. The small but memorable cast of characters uses dialogue punctuated with bits of Nahuatl language that helps bring this futuristic version of Tenochtitlan to life. It feels like this vision of an alternate history Aztec empire was crafted with care and consideration, which goes a long way towards smoothing over some of its rougher aspects. It may have its charms, but Aztec Forgotten Gods certainly has its share of frustrations too. It's refreshing to see a rarely used historical setting brought to life in a new way, and Actli's struggles to overcome her own past while grappling with the history of Aztec civilization makes her a worthy heroine. But while it can be an enjoyable adventure in its own right, a disobedient camera, weak combat, and aggravating boss battles drag its satisfying flying back down to earth. For more, check out our reviews of LX2 or Elden Ring. And for everything else, keep it right here on IGN.